Hey, and welcome back to the Drawing Database. It's Professor Marc Leone. Now we're going to look at, now is the time to look at drapery and fabric. So let me get a little bit bigger nib here so you can actually see it besides the tiny one. That wouldn't work, right? Drapery and fabric. How about that? So I have a lot of interest out there from YouTube land, and of course from my students here at NKU, is to begin to solve the riddle of drapery and fabric. Well, drapery and fabric, the concept of all that really is cloth, okay, the material cloth. And if we go into cloth as the material, we could break cloth down to many different things. Well, what can we break down cloth? Well, if we take just the idea of cloth, right, okay, we can see that without some kind of influence on it, it's just a simple kind of sheet, sheet of material. Maybe it's stitched here, stitched there, like a piece of bedding, etc., and so on. But it's got to have some influence. So if it has an influence, so if it has a cloth sheet plus, let's say, a chair, right? Then it's going to be influence, and it's going to be kind of boxy. And so then it's going to have a chair kind of influence, right? Like so. And then there's going to be cloth over that. And it's going to have a little feel of kind of drapery, right? So it's going to have some kind of influence. So we have the concept, how to draw drapery is not really the right way to think about it. Is how are we looking at ideas and thinking about drawing drapery, and what is drapery? What is fabric? Well, it's cloth of many different things. It's polyester, it's cotton, it's hemp, it's satin, it's velvet, it's all those other products out there too as well that you can think of. Then we have, just in its own little form, is a very thin, if we looked at a sheet of drapery, very stiff and rigid. That's all it looks like, right? And then we look at it from the front, that's really all it is kind of a shape. And it's going to have some kind of influence. Well, one of the bigger influencing shapes of cloth and drapery overall is the cylinder. And it shows up no matter what the influencing form underneath it is, which a lot of times will be the human figure. Okay, so we have the human figure, and that's what we call the influencing form. That means it informs it, because on its own, fabric is kind of like water. So I'll put water-ish over there. That means that it can take on many different shapes. But when we, getting back to the cylinder idea, when we really look at it, and I'm going to show you quite a bit of images from Michelangelo and Leonardo, you're going to see that as we find with the idea of drapery, we're going to be doing this a lot of times. We're going to be pitching and rolling, and we're going to be high and low. Pitching and rolling high and low. And what you notice is this little underneath shape is kind of a half cylinder, isn't it? And so we see this a lot of times underneath cloth in many different kinds of directions. So these, you can think of these as half cylinders based off of the true larger, larger kind of a cylinder. So one of the ways I like to think and tell my students when we get to these concepts is there are 4 words I like to use, and you'll hear me say them quite a bit, and they make 2 phrases, okay? And this is kind of like this fabric roller coaster that we're going to be on. It's the fabric roller coaster. Those of you that have partaken in roller coasters, they're fabulous until you get my age. I'm 50 now, and oh man, I'm too old for roller coasters. It does something with your ears. I don't know. I can't handle it anymore. When I was a kid, I would go crazy with them, but now I can't. Now, the point being, what are those 4 words and what are those 2 phrases? Well, here they are. It is this, is pitch, okay, pitch and roll, and high and low. Pitch and roll, high and low. What this means is that we're pitching and turning and rolling, and we're going high and low, and we're using the cylinder to influence our roller coaster, right, on any form that, or any drapery that we draw, which is going to be influenced by what are the things that can influence our drawing. Well, let's take a look at that. Let me erase this off a little bit, and we'll go to another sheet here. You can stop motion that and write those concepts down a little bit further as you're doing that. So what are the influencers off that? Well, there's generally, we've already talked about the cylinder. That's going to be the big influencer naturally. Okay, then we're going to have furniture is going to be a big influencer of the form of the gesture, if you will. I'll put out here too. Gesture plus form. You're going to have cylinder, furniture, and then you're going to have a big one, which will be the human figure. And then I'll also put probably animals too, as well as you're drawing. These will be the form influencers. What does that mean? That means that, again, as you're drawing, what's underneath the drapery. So again, we have the drapery, which in itself is pretty nondescript, right? But then we put, like I said, we have a box here, which is a form influencer, and then we put the drapery right over the box. That's going to look something like this, okay, from the side, kind of a side view. Maybe we'll put three-dimensional here, and now we've got all this little folds from the form, which is more cylindrical, right? And then we've got a box underneath it, and so now you have your form influencer there. So that's kind of that's really what happens with drapery. So those are the things to remember. It's not that complex. We have pitch and roll, high and low. Our major influencer overall is going to be the cylinder in our kind of our roller coaster of design here, the roller coaster of drapery. And then what are our influencing objects underneath? Either furniture, the human figure, animals, etc., which gets us the gesture and the form. All right, so now let's go on to some images, and I'll show you a few more things that you're going to need to know or want to know about edges, hard edges versus soft edges. And then, of course, we'll get into lighting as well, and then light, value, and edges and contrast when we get into the drawing. All right, let's go on and take a look at Leonardo and Michelangelo. All right, so now for some study of drapery from now Leonardo. We'll take it a couple of Leonardo viewpoints. So you can see now and I'm using kind of a red tone. You can see up here I was kind of fiddling with which nib I wanted to utilize here, but you see the overall flow. Really just this generally fabric, kind of a satiny fabric, a little bit shiny, that's sitting on the lap of the female. We can see the figure emerging through with the knee, the calf, and then down to the foot, and then the other leg right in through. You can see that through there. So it takes on the form of the figure, and it starts to get cylindrical. And then we can start to analyze what's going on here by these turning, the idea now of turning. So we see we're going high here. I'm over here, you can start to follow me, high through. Then we're starting to pitch down, we're gonna go low. Then we have a curvature here, contour, then higher, high, 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 up. And then we're curving back behind. And so now we're gonna go lower and through there, and there's a turn, and then right in through here, a little hard edge. Now you're gonna have to be careful with your edge control, because we have, right where I'm drawing here, that's the end of a piece of the fabric, which is a harder edge. So when you have a boundary, like you see where my arrows are out here, where you're going to see the end of fabric, that's going to be a harder edge. I think that freaks out students a little bit that are just starting to draw fabric. Here I am over here to the side. The molecular end of a form here as well. Notice how they all have all hard edges, but when we start to draw back over here, we really see how we really get the feeling of a tube or a cylinder. So here we are, we're pitching now, rolling, right? And then we're high here, high, because it's the light sources coming from almost directly above. I'll put a little circle here where the light source is, kind of a light bulb, right? And moving down that way. And now we're rolling, pitching and rolling. We're low from high, high, low, soft transition, low, 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 right? And then now we're rolling, rolling on through, pitch and roll, and we're going up, 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 higher. So now we went from low, now we're going back up to high. Now, as we come back over this way, we're doing the same thing, we're just pitching at a different side. Now this little, right here, this edge, you see that edge where it's stronger? Let me see if I can go in a little bit here. And I'll come up a little too as well. You can tell where, see that hard edge that I'm showing you right here? That's a harder edge with the end of the fabric where two folds come together, kind of like this to that, and we're seeing over the top of it. We see that hard edge. That's something that's going to be a little tricky, I think, to keep aware of. So you know, you have those harder edges versus softer edges. For instance, let's come down here in this middle section. See what that dark is? You see that edge right there? That's a harder edge. And it's a basic drawing concept of edges. But everything here, the pitching, right? We're pitching sideways, and we're rolling high to low, and then we're curving over, pitching and curving here, right? And then we're disappearing underneath this curve as the cloth disappears, and contour lines help with that. They're just complete disappearance right in through there, and we're turning back under and into the form itself. And so this is going to leave us with a hard edge right in through there. Now, when drawing drapery, gesture is important, just like it is with anything else that you want to do in certainly in drawing. And this whole idea, let's go to a slightly different color here to show the gesture of what we're looking at. And that gesture really is, it's very human, isn't it? Here's the beginning gesture of that, the lap of all this flowing through some of the major design lines here and over to the foot sideways through there. Excuse me there, sneeze. And the gesture here on the edge, and then we've got some of the basic forms of the gesture here on the outside. What you want to be careful of is when you're drawing fabric in the beginning is to try not to see everything at one time. Easier said than done, right? It's like drawing glass, which is probably another drawing lesson. I just realized that, right? Is that you want to get the flow and movement of whatever the rhythm is going, and then the outside relative shape, and then you can start to pick apart like areas of detail later on. But we go into that area right in through there. Let's get us over to that. And the whole idea of pitch and roll and high and low work very well for us right in through here. Let me take this nib down a little, and we can see as we analyze, it's the same thing. This whole idea of this more complex folding area with more folds as we did the larger ones. So we're pitching and rolling. You know, it's on some angles of pitch, right? And rolling through and soft. And we're coming down, curving, 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 over, high, and then low, and pitching back through, underneath, right? And then back over, high to low, low on the inside, or rolling in, if you will, right, over, curving back in and underneath. It would be very beneficial for you to do, and maybe I'll just do one here with another one of Michelangelo's coming up, where we'll do a contour line and study. And so if you can train yourself to start to see the flow and the movement of these lines as tubes, cylinders. See how they curve over. That's why the half cylinder, the cylinder is so important in all this. Coming over, coming over, coming over, right? And then it disappears, and then this is the end of a little bit of that fabric, and that's why we get that hard edge right in through there, underneath, right, under, and then over, high, right, roll, high, and then pitching low, in this case, low and underneath as well. So if we pull out a little bit, the idea of that, now you don't necessarily want to finish your drawing or leave your drawing in that contour line kind of idea, although you could, but have a hatched kind of look. But the whole idea is to understand the undergirding of what we're doing. Rolling in through here, pitching, then coming up high, and then low, right, to a valley, if you will. So it's like mountains, peaks of mountains to a valley peak, and then we valley out, and then we have a little high spot, roll, pitch and roll, because we're on the cylinder, and then this folds so strongly underneath that this is really strong, and then we get a cast shadow, but also an edge, and through there, same thing over here, really rolling on through and underneath, and you get waves of that kind of coming through. Okay, so that's what we're looking for there. Let's go on to another image now by Leonardo. So another beautiful drapery study by Leonardo, and you notice he gets this beautiful form setting in of the drapery, very softly lit from high, slightly in front, probably a little bit to the left. We see the light source, so somewhere over here coming back into our vision. Now I'm going to gesture kind of in blue so we can see the shape a little bit, right? And there's this whole rhythm of flow downward this way, right? So we get this flow out this way. Of course, you can get some of these softer edges, okay? And then I gesture these larger shapes inside. Right now I just see this kind of in shapes. It's kind of a hole in through here, down through, and this larger form as it turns, the rhythm is moving this way and on through here and over. And of course you get to kind of the end of the edge of that. Now, the major kind of crevasses here, or the low points or rolling points, are here, right, and here in there. So those are kind of big, larger shapes, but they're both trapped in with each other, almost kind of like eyes, with harder edges because of the folding underneath. And then as we get deeper, right, inside the form, we have more edges to deal with. These are harder edges versus these interior softer edges that really make us think about what it is that we're doing with the forms. But we have a depth that goes inside. So what's out here, as it's pitching and rolling on these half cylinders, is on the higher end of the drapery, right? And what's underneath, or what's going back in space, is we kind of open up the drapery with some hard edges, and we go darker because it's being hidden from the light, and then we see even more depth of drapery where the boundary is. Because generally a piece of clothing with drapery is probably going to be mostly kind of a rectangle, right? And then it's going to be crumpled and folded, isn't it, right? Like this. And it's going to have these several different rolled feelings as they roll over, under, highs and lows, and then pitching and rolling underneath. And that's the idea, is to start to feel that as you draw. Roll underneath and roll up high and on over and out. That's going to be very important to get this whole idea as we begin to draw. Okay, but the whole first idea, again, is gesture. And then if we go a little bit deeper now with our I'm going to change our color back a little bit here to red. There we go. We can again see this whole idea of dark underneath, rolling very deep, low, and then pitching high, real high, right, and then rolling underneath. And it kind of stays flat, doesn't it, through here, and then all of a sudden it gets higher, rolls up high, pitches low, deep inside, comes back, over, again, in this whole idea. And then you get these pitches sideways through and then over and around. And so you can just really go on these journeys of coming over and over and over and pitch in through. It's very complex, very fun when you start to get this whole idea. But when you get a hard edge, it's going to end and it's going to curve back on into itself. So if we looked at that from a side view, something that might pitch here, go high, and then go low, but then curve way, drapery can curve way into itself and touch itself and come back through. This is kind of from a side view. And then we get something that's not quite as strong, is that we're going to get right there, right in this spot, a real strong hard edge as we're looking, as we're drawing it. If we're looking especially from over here, we're going to get a very strong edge. So we get that rhythm, and then it goes in under itself. So it's going to be a very strong edge, and that's what's happening in areas where you see that strong line as it folds back way underneath itself as well. All right, let's go on to another image. All right, now we have Michelangelo. So we have Sybil here looking and studying the book, etc. Notice how the big bulky figure of the female model, influenced by the male form, now is influencing the cloth and the clothing. So the gesture follows, doesn't it? It follows the, and I'm doing this really lightly, the overall form of the model. So the form here is the product, or the rhythm is the product of the function of the figure, the rib cage, the abdomen, the flow of the leg, outright, the flow and through here. And so that's part of it. Then the loop of the cloth down through the lower leg and over, etc. There's a real rhythm through that. Once you get the rhythm of the figure, drapery really isn't that bad. Then we get kind of the side area of the rhythm kind of coming down too as well. Then of course, you know, it's rhythm, but it's also the outer boundaries of these edges that you want to get into. I'm not going to go into great detail, but you want to get some of these major folds first. Of course, we have differences of color, which help as well. We have peach, and we have yellow, and orange, and white. In some of these, you know, stronger separations, but getting the outer boundary. I would say, you know, as you're sketching drapery, you want to be a little careful and not be so distinctively rigid and hard edge, because we even have drapery here, right, with the kind of the mantle where the book is laying on further. Let's go in a little bit deeper, and I'll change color. Then I'll show you the pitch and the roll and the high and the low here that we'll get into. So we see this coming over, and we see coming from over in where my dot is, now coming from behind, now we're pitching. We went from high, now we're coming over, and we're rolling over, right? Rolling over, coming down, and we hit an edge. This curls right underneath, doesn't it? Curls around, cylinder, right? Tube. Here's an even small curved tube, over. Then the stronger, darker line here, and that harder edge is where it curls onto itself like a coil. So that's a super tight cylinder. Here where we see a little bit of light tells me where this is a tighter coil. Then it's going to pitch as it goes lower, and then it starts to flatten out across, right? Flatten out across. Here's the edge in through here. So this rolls high to low, flattens, and it comes way over again, and then it starts to gradually flow. We get this contour, deeper valley. So they're really topographical, aren't they? Peak and valley through there. Hard edge with the cloth, the fold is kind of upturned this way, and then it rolls really well underneath because of that hard edge. We know it's tucked back underneath itself because of the hard edge, because we can feel that and see that hard edge, and then it's going to roll way underneath again, and at some point emerge back where this green is. Slight change over and around, curve, right, curve, high to low, curve in, over, right, folding here and then downward, folding here, downward, folding, really peeking underneath, and we're kind of coming over. This comes over, and you can follow this many different directions. You could do it this way, or you could kind of curve over this way. Again, this is just thinking. Most of the time when you finish out your drapery, you're going to it's satiny or it's cloth or cottony or whatever it is, you're going to render it with a softer kind of view. But again, what we're trying to do here is analyze the thinking. In the same way, follow me over here to the forearm here of the figure, and I want to show you how similar this is. This is based off, right, an egg form and also a tube. So we have the tube, right, going back in space, and we have kind of the egg form of the flexors and extensors of the foramen through here. And then again, we're going to contour, curve over them. So where have you seen that before? Over the bicep, over the bicep, over the bicep, and then a little flatter in through here. Same thing over through here as we go down the cloth, the breast, a little bit higher in the sternum, right, and then it curls over underneath and really tucks under, doesn't it? Tucks under a little bit in the belly, over, 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 right? These are very gradual peaks, very gradual rolls, pitches, I mean, underneath, over, over, because they're very soft. They're not, there's no hard edges because they're not folding in on themselves. So very similar to the human figure, right, as well as the cloth as well. And then of course we're influenced here on the mantle. What do you notice here? We get this cloth, of course it's all falling down this way, but see where the light is in through here? What do you notice? That's like a box, isn't it? It's like a 1-point box. So that cloth is kind of like water, cloth is, and it's influenced now by going back into space this way. So here, and then it turns back that 90 degrees in perspective, back into space, and it flows this way. That's where we get this lighter area because the light source is coming up somewhere up here, down and over. So very analytical approach to what we're doing, and it's important to analyze. When you go to museums, if you're really ambitious, do that. You can do that in your mind, or you can write in your sketchbook. You probably don't want to say it out loud. People might think you're a little crazy, but that's okay. I'll understand you if I ever see you. Right, of course. But you can say, oh, I can see where those peaks are. So there's multiple things you can work on when you go to museums and look at images. So again, notice down here, see that hard edge? That's really going to go low and pitch underneath the hard edge of the form of the cloth and go way back underneath, and eventually emerge back into the darkness as well. So quite important. All right, let's go on to just one more Michelangelo, and then we can end our time with this beginning drapery lecture. Okay, so let's analyze first the gesture, shall we, of our Michelangelo Sybil here as well. Very much with the figure. Obviously we have the head here, right, and then the flow through her back. Look at that design through the knee, then over through the leg, over to the knee. You can see the human form starting to come through a little bit, right in through, over to the head, the hand, to the arm, and through here, design of the back, right, to the big line of being shaped, and through here, and there's your flow of your gesture, of your drapery. Now there's obviously more to it than that. You want to get those boundaries and borders of where we see the form, emerge, and that's important too. But the overall design is very flowy. And then what is the influencing form of the drapery? It's got to be influenced by something. Otherwise, it's just a sheet, or it's a piece of a cutout rectangle. In this case, it's the human figure. And so we've seen that. We're starting to understand that. And then let's go back to our red tone and do some pitching rolls and go high and low here. And I think we'll really understand what we have. Let's go into an intriguing area here of the head and the the bicep and the arm. And you've got some real wickedly complex forms. It forms and curves, don't you? It's the same thing. Now you're going to draw this first of all. I should go back in blue, but you're going to draw all these gesture parts first, right? But ultimately, when we break this down, let's go one more part deeper in the head, to the head. It's a little pixelated, but I think we'll get it. Is the same thing as we've got valley, 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 high, right or low, high, high, high on that coil, the curve, A little bit lower, coming over the curve of the cranium, right, curving, curving. Then we're going to go low, pitch high, low, high in the light, right, low, low. Then we're going to pitch a little softer and, you know, gradual over through here. It's not quite as intense because here we went like a roller coaster. We went up high, down low, up high, down low. We gradually came through lower trough, low, low, pitch low, back to high quick, right? Gradual pitch and roll to a high, then to a low, and then real strong, real curve, real strong curve, back to a low, and so on and so forth. And so you'll find that you'll be able to, if we go out a little bit, be able to handle those smaller areas. And then we see the influence of the bicep here, right? The pitch across the bicep, deltoid, then the bicep over here, right? And then that fabric underneath, over, underneath, roll, lower, lower, and then we're around as well. Of course, we have these stronger edges. Be careful of your stronger edges over there as well, so that you know where to end the form. Same thing here on the peaches drapery. High pitch, kind of a slanted pitch, and then lower, underneath, lower, and then back over again. Overlaps, a little foreshortening too as well. Right, low, 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 high over, high over, high over, etc. And so we've got it. And then when we have stronger gathering of fabric, we're going to get into some more of those harder edges. Gathering of fabric will get you harder edges. Gathering as well as the end of forms. Here we have the end of the fabric, right? And we have a lot of gathering in the bicep, deltoid in the head, and we have some gathering here, which is not quite as hard edge, and we have quite a bit and a real strong gather between the thigh, right, and the calf and where she's sitting down, and you'll get a lot of hard edges. So there you go, pitch and roll, high and low, based on the cylinder, the half cylinder, and kind of a roller coaster feel to the movement of cloth and fabric, which is drapery. Okay, after you got through this, you're ready to start drawing. Take a deep breath, and we'll get to the next video, which will be actually putting all this into drawing practice. I'll see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.